The Empress's hand trembled as she reached for the human ambassador, and the entire court held its breath. No one had touched a Valyrian royal in 17 cycles, not since the plague that had turned their skin into a weapon against warmth-blooded species. And here stood this fool from Earth, offering his palm like it meant nothing. "You cannot be serious, High Counselor," Sethrin hissed from beside the obsidian throne. His silver scales caught the bioluminescent light as he stepped forward. "Your Radiance, this is an insult wrapped in diplomatic cloth." Empress Aelindra did not respond. Her violet eyes remained fixed on the human's outstretched hand, on the calluses visible even from the throne's height, on the steady lack of tremor in his fingers. The neural toxin that now laced her epidermis would cause him agony. Every Valyrian knew this. Every species in the Confederation knew this. The human knew this too. "Ambassador Cole," she finally spoke, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones of her kind, "you understand what you offer?" Marcus Cole, former mining engineer from the Titan colonies, current diplomatic attaché, through a series of theories. Bureaucratic accidents he still didn't fully understand, lowered his hand slowly. Not in withdrawal, in consideration. "I understand that your people haven't been touched in almost 2 decades, Your Radiance. I understand that the Confederation sends ambassadors who stand 6 meters away and speak through filters. I understand that my government sent me because I was expendable enough to risk." He paused, something shifting in his weathered face. "And I understand that being untouchable isn't the same as not wanting to be touched." A ripple of shock passed through the assembled nobles. Sethrin's claws extended involuntarily. "You speak out of turn," another counselor snapped, Lady Vaitha, her crimson scales marking her as military caste. "The Empress's condition is not a subject for human commentary. With respect, it became my subject when your Confederation requested human medical archives on neural toxin resistance." Marcus met Lady Vaitha's glare without flinching. "My sister was a xenobiologist on Kepler Station. She spent 3 years researching Valyrian biochemistry before the station was decommissioned. Before she..." He stopped. Swallowed. "Before she was lost." The silence that followed was different. Empress Aelindra rose from her throne, the movement fluid despite the heavy ceremonial robes that concealed most of her scaled form. At full height, she stood nearly half a meter taller than the human, her crest of silver spines casting shadows across the polished floor. "You carry grief," she observed. It was not a question. "I carry her research," Marcus corrected quietly. "Which is why I'm here instead of someone with actual diplomatic training. Your physicians thought her work might help. I thought delivering it personally was the least I could do for her memory." "And the hand?" Aelindra descended the first step of the dais. Guards shifted nervously. "Was that also for her memory?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its diplomatic evenness. "No. That was because I saw how you looked when I entered. The way you leaned forward just slightly when I didn't use the distance markers. The way your hands," he gestured carefully, "opened instead of closed. You presumed to read the Empress of Valyria?" Sethrin's voice dripped with contempt. "I presume nothing. I'm just a miner who spent 15 years reading rock formations to survive. You learn to notice small things. Shifts. Fractures." Marcus looked directly at Aelindra. Isolation. The Empress had reached the bottom of the dais now. This close, Marcus could see the faint luminescence beneath her scales, the visible marker of the toxin that coursed through her system, the gift left by the plague that had killed 30% of her species and transformed 3 survivors. "Human touch burns her skin," Sethrin said, as if explaining to a child. "Your mammalian heat activates the toxin's defensive response. Even a brief contact would cause you significant pain in her." He paused, choosing his words. "Considerable distress at having harmed a diplomatic guest." "I'm aware," Marcus said. "Then why?" "Because someone should offer anyway." The words hung in the air. Aelindra's expression, difficult to read on Valyrian features, shifted into something Marcus couldn't identify. Her attendants had gone completely still. Even Lady Vaitha's perpetual scowl had faded into uncertainty. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Ambassador Cole," Aelindra said finally. "Probably both, Your Radiance. Mostly foolish if my supervisors are to be believed." The faintest curve appeared at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile, but something adjacent to it. "Your supervisors are not here." "No, they're not. They're back on Earth, probably hoping the expendable mining engineer doesn't cause an interstellar incident before the trade agreements are signed. And yet here you stand, risking exactly that." "Here I stand," Marcus agreed. "Offering what costs me nothing to give and might mean something to receive. That's not bravery or foolishness. That's just," he searched for the word, "decency." Aelindra studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to Sethrin. "Clear the court, Your Radiance." "Did I stutter, Counselor?" Marcus had heard that tone before, from foremen who'd had enough, from officers who'd reached their limit. It was the voice of someone accustomed to being obeyed who rarely had to remind anyone of that fact. The court emptied in minutes. Even Sethrin retreated, though his glare promised this conversation was far from over. Soon only the Empress, Marcus, and 2 silent guards remained in the vast chamber. You should know, Alindra said quietly, that I have not touched another living being since the plague transformed me. Not my mother before she died. Not my sister when she wept at our father's funeral. Not the child who reached for me in the refugee camps before his parents pulled him away in terror. That's, Marcus's voice caught. That's 17 years, Your Radiance. 17 years, 43 days, and approximately 8 hours, she confirmed. One learns to count when counting is all one has. Then let me, no. She raised a hand, stopping him. Not like this. Not as a gesture, however well meant. The pain you would experience is not trivial, Ambassador. My toxin would feel like fire spreading through your nervous system. Most warm-blooded species lose consciousness within seconds. I've been burned before. Not like this. Her voice softened. And I find that I do not wish to hurt you. Which is, what? Unexpected. Marcus absorbed that. Then what would you have me do, Your Radiance? Stay. The words seemed to surprise her as much as him. The trade negotiations will take weeks. Your sister's research must be properly analyzed. And I find your company, she paused, searching for the right word, tolerable. More than tolerable. You do not flinch. You do not perform the elaborate dance of disgust, disguised as courtesy, that most ambassadors perfect. I was a minor, Your Radiance. We don't really do elaborate dances. No, she agreed. You do not. And perhaps that is precisely what this court needs. Marcus bowed. A human gesture she observed with evident curiosity. Then I'll stay. But Your Radiance, yes? Someday, when you're ready, I'm going to offer my hand again. And I hope you'll take it. Her luminescence flickered. The Valorian equivalent of a blush, though he didn't know it yet. You are persistent, Ambassador Cole. It's Marcus. And yes, I am. It's a human failing. Or perhaps, she said quietly, a human strength. 3 weeks into his extended stay, Marcus had learned several things about Valorian culture. Their day cycle was 18 hours. They valued precision in all things. And they absolutely, categorically did not understand the concept of coffee. It is a poison, Lady Vaitha said flatly, watching him nurse his cup in the diplomatic quarters. You willingly consume a toxin each morning. Your species is insane. It's a mild stimulant, Marcus corrected. And considering your people's primary export is a spice that makes human food taste like it's screaming, I don't think you have room to judge. Vaitha's scales shifted to a darker crimson, amusement he'd learned, though on her it looked indistinguishable from irritation. The Empress has requested your presence in the Western Gardens. Immediately. Of course she has. Marcus set down his cup. Any idea why? I am not Her Radiance's confidant, Ambassador. I am merely tasked with ensuring you do not wander into restricted areas or insult anyone beyond recovery. I haven't insulted anyone in at least 6 hours. I am aware. It is concerning. Vaitha turned crisply on her heel. Follow me. The Western Gardens were unlike anything Marcus had seen on Earth or the colonies. Bioluminescent flora cast the space in shades of blue and violet, while crystalline structures hummed with frequencies just below human hearing. At the center of a clearing, Empress Alindra stood before a pool of water, so still, it seemed solid. She was alone, genuinely alone, without even the ceremonial guards. The vulnerability of that struck Marcus harder than he expected. Ambassador Cole. She didn't turn. You know why I've summoned you? Your Radiance, I've learned not to assume anything where you're concerned. A wise policy. She finally faced him, and something in her posture was different. Less formal. More tired. Your sister's research. My physicians have completed their initial analysis. Marcus's heart stuttered. And? It is remarkable work. Her understanding of our neural pathways exceeded anything our own scientists had documented. She identified the precise mechanism by which warmth triggers the toxin's defensive response. Alindra paused. She also identified a theoretical pathway to suppress it. Theoretical? The treatment she proposed was never tested, could never be tested, as she was. Alindra's voice softened, lost before she could complete the trials. But her notes indicate she believed a gradual exposure protocol might train the Valorian nervous system to recognize certain heat signatures as non-threatening. Marcus processed this slowly. Gradual exposure. You mean, I mean that my physicians believe, with significant uncertainty, that repeated brief contact with the same human individual might eventually, allow my system to adapt. The pain would be considerable at first. It would decrease over time if the theory holds. If it does not hold. She trailed off. Then I experience a lot of pain for nothing. You would be under no obligation. This is not part of any trade agreement. It is not a diplomatic requirement. It is, she faltered, and Marcus realized he had never seen her falter before. It is a personal request, Ambassador. One I have no right to make. Marcus stepped closer. Close enough that he could see the luminescence pulsing beneath her scales, brighter than usual. Stress, he'd learned. Or strong emotion. Your Radiance, Alindra. The correction came quietly. If you are to be my test subject, I think first names are appropriate. Ailindra. The name felt strange on his tongue, intimate in a way he hadn't expected. You're asking if I'll let you hurt me so that someday you might be able to touch someone without hurting them. I'm asking if you'll let me try to heal, knowing the cost will fall on you. Her violet eyes met his. I'm asking for something I have no right to ask, from someone I barely know, because you are the first person in 17 years who has made me believe it might be worth trying. Why me? Because you offered. Simple. Direct. Tight. Because you saw my isolation and did not look away. Because you carry your own grief and somehow still reached out. He paused. Because when you look at me, you do not see a monster. You're not. I am, to many. The untouchable empress. Poison queen. I have heard the whispers. I know what the other species call me when they think Valyrians are not listening. Her voice dropped. I had begun to believe them. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he held out his hand again. The same gesture from that first day, but waited now with understanding. When do we start? Ailindra's breath caught. You need time to consider, surely. The pain will be temporary. Your isolation has been permanent. That math isn't hard. It is not that simple. Nothing ever is. He kept his hand extended. But I'm still here. I'm still offering. And you're still worth reaching for. The first contact was agony. Marcus had prepared himself, but there was no preparation adequate for the sensation of his nervous system catching fire from a single point of contact. Ailindra's fingers had barely brushed his palm before the toxin activated, and suddenly every nerve from his hand to his shoulder was screaming. He didn't pull away. Ailindra's eyes went wide. She tried to withdraw, but Marcus had closed his fingers around hers, gently, without force. Just enough to maintain contact. Don't, he managed through gritted teeth. The protocol. 30 seconds. You're in pain. I've been, he gasped as a fresh wave hit, in pain before. Count. He counted. 23 seconds in, the fire began to fade. By 30 it had reduced to a persistent burn, like holding a hand too close to a flame. By 35 it was almost bearable. Enough. Ailindra pulled back, and Marcus let her. His hand was shaking, faintly red, but intact. He flexed his fingers experimentally. That wasn't so bad. You are a terrible liar, Ambassador, Marcus, he reminded her. And I'm not lying. I've grabbed live electrical cables that hurt worse. You grabbed? Why would you? She stopped. You're genuinely insane. Occupational hazard. He examined his palm. The redness was already fading. Same time tomorrow? Ailindra stared at him. In 17 years no one had willingly touched her. Now this human, this stubborn, grief-scarred human, was asking to do it again. You would continue? After experiencing that? That was the deal, wasn't it? Gradual exposure. He flexed his hand again. Besides, my sister spent 3 years working on this research. Seems wrong not to see it through. This is not about your sister. No, Marcus agreed quietly. It's about you. But she would have wanted to help you anyway. She was like that. Couldn't stand to see anyone hurting if she could do something about it. Didn't matter if they were human or Valyrian or some species she'd never encountered before. She just reached out. And she taught you to do the same. She taught me that isolation kills slower than most poisons, but just as surely. He met Ailindra's eyes. Same time tomorrow, your radiance. She was quiet for a long moment. Then softly, same time tomorrow, Marcus. 47 days. 47 mornings in the western garden, with the bioluminescent flowers casting their gentle glow as Marcus extended his hand and Ailindra took it. The pain had reduced to a dull ache now, still present. Still a reminder that her body was fighting against warmth it had learned to fear, but manageable. Contact duration had extended too. 30 seconds had become a minute, then 2, then 5. Yesterday she had held his hand for 7 minutes while they discussed the trade negotiations, and Marcus had only winced twice. Council is suspicious, Ailindra said, watching their joined hands. Her luminescence had shifted over the weeks. Softer now during these sessions, more controlled. Sethrin believes you are manipulating me. Lady Vaitha thinks I've lost my reason. My sister Tevelin is convinced we are conducting a secret affair. Are we? The question, delivered with characteristic human directness, made her scales flush violet. I do not know what we are conducting, Marcus. I only know that these mornings have become the part of my day I most anticipate, and that terrifies me. Why? Because anticipation leads to hope, and hope is a wound that never heals cleanly. She did not release his hand. Because I have learned to want nothing, and now I find that I want. She stopped. What? Marcus prompted gently. What do you want? More. The word came out barely above a whisper. I want more than 7 minutes. More than supervised sessions in a garden with guards waiting just beyond the tree line. More than diplomatic courtesy and medical protocols. Ailindra, I want to know what it feels like to be touched without counting the seconds until it ends. I want to fall asleep beside someone and wake to find them still there. I want—" Her voice cracked, and the sound was so unlike her that Marcus's chest ached with it. "I want to know what it feels like to be loved without the person you love recoiling from your skin." Marcus turned his hand in hers, intertwining their fingers. The motion caused him a sharp spike of pain, but he didn't flinch. "You know I'm not recoiling. You are enduring. That's not the same thing. Is it not?" She finally looked at him, and her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears if Valyrians wept. "You are brave, Marcus. Brave and kind and stubborn in ways I did not know humans could be. But bravery is not the same as desire. Kindness is not the same as love. And I will not mistake endurance for genuine affection simply because I am desperate enough to want it to be true." Elindra ... He stepped closer, close enough that her other hand could rest against his chest if she chose. "Look at me." She did. "I'm not enduring. I'm not being brave. I'm not here because I feel obligated or because it helps the trade negotiations or because it's what my sister would have wanted." He took a breath. "I'm here because every morning when I wake up, the first thing I think about is seeing you. I'm here because when you smile, and you're starting to smile more, have you noticed that? Something in my chest feels like it's finally learning to breathe again. I'm here because—" An explosion shattered the morning's stillness. Marcus moved on instinct, years of mining accidents making his response automatic. He pulled Elindra down, covering her body with his as debris rained through the garden. The full body contact was fire, his nervous system screaming as every point of touch between them activated her toxin. But he didn't let go. "Marcus." Elindra's voice was horrified. You have to, don't move." He could feel himself shaking, could feel the toxin spreading through his system like liquid flame, but the sound of weapons fire had joined the explosion now. "Someone's attacking. You're the target. You have to be the target. You're dying. I'm not dying, I'm just—" He gritted his teeth as a fresh wave hit, very motivated to end this quickly. Guards were rushing in now, weapons drawn, but another explosion drove them back. Through the smoke, Marcus saw figures in dark armor breaching the garden's eastern wall. Assassins. Moving in formation, clearly trained, clearly organized. And Elindra in his arms was completely vulnerable. "Can you move?" he asked. "Marcus, your skin, you're burning up. Can you move?" She stared at him for a fraction of a second. Then her expression hardened into something almost human in its determination. "Yes." "Stay behind me." "Absolutely not. I'm the Empress of Valyria, and you are a mining engineer from a mining colony, who's been in more life-threatening situations than most of your military officers, your Radiants." He pulled her upright, ignoring the fire racing through his nerves. "Move. Now. I'll cover. With what weapon?" Marcus grabbed a fallen piece of crystalline structure. Heavy, sharp-edged, singing faintly with residual energy. Miners improvise. The next few minutes were chaos. The assassins, 4 of them, had clearly expected their explosions to scatter the guards and leave the Empress exposed. They had not expected a human civilian to attack them with improvised weapons and absolutely no sense of self-preservation. Marcus fought dirty because he learned to fight dirty, using the crystal shard to deflect energy blasts, throwing debris to distract, keeping himself between the attackers and Elindra whenever possible. The pain from the toxin exposure was making everything hazy at the edges, but he'd worked through pain before. He could work through it now. 1 assassin down, blade deflected into their own armor. 2 down, tackled by guards who'd finally regrouped. 3 down, crystal shard through a gap in their helmet. The 4th shot him in the chest. The energy blast caught him center mass, spinning him backward. He hit the ground hard, the world going white with a different kind of pain. And somewhere far away he heard Elindra screaming his name. Then, silence. When Marcus woke, everything hurt. This was familiar territory at least. He'd woken up hurting many times, after the mining accident that had scarred his left shoulder, after the cave-in that had killed his crew and somehow spared him, after the explosion that had cost him 3 months of his life, and most of his belief that the universe made any kind of sense. What was less familiar was the Empress of Valyria sitting beside his bed, clutching his hand like it was the only thing anchoring her to reality. "You're awake." Her voice was hoarse. Raw. "The physician said you might not." They said the combination of the toxin exposure and the energy blast. She stopped. "You almost died. Almost is a good word." His voice came out as a croak. "Means I didn't. You should have. The toxin was in your system for 18 minutes of continuous contact. No warm-blooded species has ever survived more than 12. I was very motivated. You were very stupid." But she didn't release his hand. Her luminescence was flickering erratically. Grief, he recognized now. Grief and fear and something he wasn't quite ready to name. "You put yourself between me and plasma fire, Marcus. With no armor. No weapons. Nothing but a piece of broken crystal and a very stubborn refusal to let anything hurt you." He tightened his fingers around hers, gently, testing. The pain was there, but diminished. More like holding warm metal than touching fire. Seems to be working. What? The pain? It's less. He lifted their joined hands. Either the near-death experience accelerated the adaptation, or your toxin is giving me a break after what I put myself through. Either way, he tried to smile and mostly succeeded. Feels like we might be making progress. Alindra stared at him. Then, very carefully, she reached out with her free hand and touched his face. It burned. Not as badly as before, but still enough to make him hiss through his teeth. But she didn't pull back, and neither did he, and for a long moment they stayed like that. Her palm against his cheek, his hand wrapped around hers, the pain a constant presence that somehow made the contact more real. Human touch burns her skin, Alindra whispered, echoing what Sethran had said that first day. And yet she holds my hand every morning anyway. He remembered what he said. I remember everything about that day. It was the first time in 17 years that someone reached for me without flinching. Her thumb traced his cheekbone, feather light, barely there. It was the first time I let myself believe that touch might be possible again. It is possible. We're proving it's possible. At what cost? You almost died, Marcus. You've been enduring pain every morning for 47 days. You threw yourself in front of plasma fire for me. Her voice cracked. How am I supposed to accept that? How am I supposed to let you keep sacrificing yourself when you what? She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the luminescence beneath her scales had shifted to something deep and steady, the color of certainty, of decision. When I love you, she said. Against all reason. Against all logic. Against every self-protective instinct I have cultivated over 17 years of isolation. She leaned forward, her forehead almost touching his. I love you, and I do not know what to do with that, because everything I love has been taken from me. Not everything. He lifted his free hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her crest. The spines were warm, smoother than they looked, and she shuddered at the contact. I'm still here. For now, for as long as you'll have me. He said it simply, without drama, because they were past drama now. They were in the quiet place where the truth lived. That's not a promise of forever, because humans can't promise forever. But it's a promise of every morning I have left. Every morning reaching for your hand, feeling whatever pain that costs. Because why? Because you're worth it. He smiled, and this time, it didn't hurt. Because human touch burns your skin, and you hold my hand every morning anyway. And I think... He paused, making sure of the words. I think that's what love looks like for both of us. Choosing each other despite the pain. Reaching out even when it hurts. Alindra was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned down and pressed her lips to his forehead, a Valyrian gesture of profound intimacy he would learn later. Claiming. The contact burned. He didn't pull away. Every morning, she whispered against his skin. Whatever the cost. The wedding of Empress Alindra of Valyria and Marcus Cole of Earth's Titan colonies was, by conservative estimates, the most contentious political event the Confederation had witnessed in 3 generations. Sethran had opposed it vocally, citing the dangers of elevating a human to royal status. Lady Vaitha had opposed it quietly, concerned about the military implications of binding Valyria to an untested species. Half the noble houses had threatened to boycott the ceremony, while the other half had threatened civil war if it was postponed. None of that had stopped Alindra. You're certain about this? Marcus asked, adjusting the unfamiliar collar of his ceremonial robes. The fabric was Valyrian silk, woven to accommodate human temperature regulation while meeting the demands of royal protocol. It had taken 6 artisans 2 weeks to create. The treaty arrangements would have been enough. You don't have to... I do not have to do anything, Alindra agreed, appearing in the doorway of his chambers. She was dressed in full imperial regalia, robes of deep violet and silver, that cascaded like water over her scales, her crest adorned with the ancient gems of her house. She was luminous in the literal sense, her epidermis glowing with controlled pulses of light. I choose to do this. The distinction matters. The council will adapt or they will be replaced. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see his reflection in her eyes. I did not survive 17 years of isolation to spend the rest of my reign making decisions based on fear, Marcus. Not my council's fear, not my people's fear, and not my own. And the other species? The ones who still call you, the Poison Queen? She smiled. And there was steel in it. Let them whisper. Let them speculate about what kind of madness drives a human to willingly bind himself to a Valyrian, to accept a lifetime of pain for the privilege of my company. She reached up and adjusted his collar herself, her fingers brushing his neck. The pain was minimal now, more memory than sensation. They will come to understand in time that what they call madness is simply love expressed in terms they have never witnessed. Marcus caught her hand, held it against his chest. I love you too, I know. Her luminescence shifted to the deep, steady glow he had learned to recognize. You have been telling me so every morning for 312 days. With your hands, with your presence, with every choice you have made to stay despite the cost. Cost has been worth it. Has it? She tilted her head, genuinely curious. Your nervous system has been permanently altered. Your sensitivity to temperature will never fully recover. You carry scars that will mark you for life. I also carry you. He pulled her closer until their bodies were almost touching. I carry your trust, and your hope, and your mornings. I carry the knowledge that when you wake, you reach for me first. I carry. He paused, finding the words. The only family I have left. Elindra's breath caught. In all their conversations, through all the months of pain and progress and deepening intimacy, they had never spoken of family. She had assumed the loss of his sister had closed that door entirely. Family, she repeated. My sister is gone. My parents died when I was young. The crew I worked with for 15 years. Most of them didn't survive the accident that gave me these scars. He touched her face, traced the line of her jaw. You're not a replacement for any of them. But you're not a substitute either. You're something new. Something I didn't expect to find. A family of two. For now. He smiled, and she saw the future in it. Saw children who might inherit her scales and his stubbornness. Saw a court transformed by human informality and Valyrian dignity. Saw mornings that extended into lifetimes. I'm open to expansion if you are. Human children. Valyrian children. The genetics alone would be complicated, I know. I've been reading the research. He grinned at her expression. What? I'm a mining engineer. We solve complicated problems for a living. You are impossible. I'm determined. There's a difference. He leaned in, pressed his forehead to hers, another gesture she had taught him. One that meant trust beyond words. Whatever comes next, we'll figure it out, together. Every morning. The ceremony itself was shorter than tradition demanded, but neither of them had ever been particularly bound by tradition. Elindra spoke the ancient vows in the harmonic language of her people, and Marcus responded in the simple human phrases he had spent months learning to pronounce correctly. When the moment came for the final binding, the moment where, in Valyrian custom, the partners joined hands to signify their commitment, the court held its breath. This was the test. This was the moment where 17 years of isolation met 312 days of painful progress. If Marcus flinched, if Elindra pulled back, if the toxin flared and turned this moment of joy into one of agony, Marcus took her hand. There was pain. There would always be pain. The physicians had told them. Residual fire that would never fully fade. A constant reminder that her body still fought against what her heart had chosen. But it was manageable now. Livable. The kind of pain that became background noise rather than overwhelming sensation. He intertwined his fingers with hers and did not let go. Elindra's luminescence flared, not with stress or grief, but with something that looked, to the assembled nobles, remarkably like joy. Her scales shifted through colors they had never seen her display. Warmth, contentment, triumph. Love. Human touch burns her skin. Sethrin murmured to Lady Vaitha, watching the couple stand united before the court. His voice held something that was almost respect. Yet she holds his hand every morning anyway, and he lets her, Vaitha replied. Knowing the cost. Choosing it anyway. That is either very foolish or very brave. Vaitha was quiet for a moment, watching as the Empress of Valyria smiled, genuinely smiled, without restraint or calculation, at the human who had taught her to reach for connection again. Perhaps, she said finally, it is simply human. The reception lasted hours, filled with the political maneuvering and diplomatic dance that both Marcus and Elindra had learned to navigate. But as the night wore on and the guests began to disperse, they slipped away. To the western garden, to the clearing where they had first begun their morning ritual. The bioluminescent flowers glowed softly around them. The crystalline structures hummed their subsonic songs. And in the center of it all, the Empress of Valyria and her human husband sat side by side, their hands intertwined, the pain a distant companion to the peace. Council will expect us back soon, Elindra noted, not moving. The council can wait. The ambassadors from the 7th cluster wish to discuss trade routes. The ambassadors can wait too. Marcus. She turned to look at him, her luminescence soft and steady. We cannot hide in this garden forever. No, he agreed. But we can take this moment. Here, where it started. Here, where you first let me reach for you. He lifted their joined hands, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. The pain flared briefly and faded. Here, where I learned that love isn't the absence of hurt, it's choosing to stay anyway. Human philosophy, human experience. He smiled. We're a stubborn species. We don't give up on things that matter. I am beginning to understand this. She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. Another gesture that would have been impossible a year ago, that still cost him a dull ache along his spine, that he would not have traded for anything. You have taught me a great many things, Marcus Cole. Like what? That isolation is a choice, not a sentence. That pain endured for love is different from pain endured alone. That reaching out, even when it hurts, is the bravest thing a person can do. She paused. That human touch burns my skin, and I choose to hold your hand every morning anyway, And that choice has given me more than 17 years of protection ever did. What has it given you? She lifted her head, met his eyes, and smiled with why. The full luminescence of her being. Everything, she said. It gave me everything. In the garden where they had first reached for each other, the Empress and her husband sat together as the night deepened around them. The pain remained, would always remain, a reminder of what they had overcome and what they continued to choose. But it no longer mattered. They had found something stronger. And every morning for the rest of their lives, they would reach for it again.